Nathan Carter had seen his fair share of battles, some on foreign soil, others in the chaotic mess of civilian life. But he never expected his toughest fight to be over something as ridiculous as his front door. After serving 20 years in the military, Nathan had finally settled into what he thought was the perfect retreat, a charming, brick-front home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was his. A place where he could finally unwind, work on his motorcycle in the garage, and enjoy the peace he had fought so hard to earn. That peace, however, lasted only a few months. Nathan first encountered Karen Thompson, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, when she strutted up his driveway one morning, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her sharp nose like she was surveying her kingdom. "Mr. Carter, I assume?" she said, barely glancing at him. Nathan set down his coffee and gave her a nod. "That's me." Karen pursed her lips as she scanned her notes. "We have a small issue. Your front door." She motioned towards the deep mahogany wood he had personally installed last month. "Doesn't comply with HOA standards. You'll need to replace it with one of the pre-approved colors by the end of the week." Nathan frowned. "What's wrong with it?" "It's not beige," she said, as if the answer was obvious. "Beige?" He let out a dry chuckle. "That's a problem now?" Karen's smile was the kind that never quite reached her eyes. "It's about maintaining uniformity. We wouldn't want the neighborhood's aesthetic to be disrupted, would we?" Nathan had dealt with worse: officers barking orders, unpredictable missions, bureaucratic red tape. But this was absurd. "I like my door the way it is," he said simply. Karen tilted her head. "I'm afraid it's not about what you like. The HOA rules are clear. I'll send over an official notice today, but I wanted to give you a friendly heads-up first." Nathan crossed his arms. "Friendly, huh?" Karen's smirk widened. "I do my best." With that, she turned on her heel and marched back down the driveway, already pulling out her phone, no doubt making a note of some other offense on his property. By noon, the notice was taped to his door. Failure to comply would result in a $500 fine, increasing weekly until resolved. Nathan exhaled slowly, staring at the paper in his hand. So this was how they wanted to play it? Fine. They were about to learn that messing with a retired Army sergeant wasn't just a bad idea. It was war. HOA's first power move. Nathan Carter had spent years navigating military bureaucracy, but even the most tangled chain of command had nothing on the HOA's ridiculous overreach. The day after his friendly warning, he woke up to another envelope taped to his door. This time, it was a formal violation notice, stamped with the official HOA logo. Official notice of violation. Infraction. Unauthorized exterior modification, front door color. Fine. $500, increasing by $100 every 7 days until resolved. Compliance deadline, immediate. Nathan shook his head, crumpling the letter in his fist. Immediate compliance? They had to be kidding. Before he could even set his coffee down, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of his driveway. Karen, clipboard in hand, watching like a vulture circling roadkill. "Morning, Mr. Carter," she called, her voice artificially cheerful. "Just making my rounds. I assume you received our notice." Nathan took a slow sip of his coffee. "Got it. Read it. Ignored it." Karen's smile twitched. "I'd advise against that." "Oh yeah." He leaned against his truck. "What's the HOA gonna do, launch a tactical strike?" Karen gave a small laugh, but it didn't sound amused. "No, but we do have enforcement procedures. If you fail to comply, we'll have to escalate the matter." Nathan set his coffee down. "Escalate how exactly?" She tapped her pen against her clipboard. "For starters, the fines will increase weekly. We'll also be forced to take further action, perhaps placing a lien on your property for unpaid violations." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "A lien? Over a front door?" Karen shrugged. "Rules are rules." Nathan exhaled, rubbing his temple. He had half a mind to tell her exactly where she could shove those rules, but instead, he played it cool. "Listen," he said, his voice measured. "I've read the HOA bylaws. Nowhere does it say I need permission to repaint my own door. So either you show me the exact clause I'm supposedly violating, or we both go on with our day." Karen's smug expression faltered for just a second, just enough for Nathan to notice. "Like I said," she recovered quickly, "we have enforcement procedures. I'll be in touch." With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Nathan wasn't stupid. He knew people like Karen. The ones who got a little taste of authority and let it fester into a full-blown power trip. and he had no intention of playing by their game. That night, Nathan did something he hadn't done since his military days. He pulled out a file folder and started investigating. First, he combed through the HOA's official bylaws. Nowhere did it mention anything about specific door colors. In fact, half the houses on the street had different shades. Then, he did some digging into Karen Thompson herself. A quick online search pulled up her LinkedIn, where she proudly listed herself as the HOA president and community enforcer. Nathan nearly laughed out loud. But then something caught his eye. A few months ago, another homeowner, a guy named Mike Reynolds, had publicly posted in the neighborhood forum about an unjustified HOA fine. His infraction? Non-compliant mailbox color. Sound familiar? Nathan scrolled through the comments and found that Mike had refused to pay. A week later, he mysteriously received 3 new fines. One for overgrown grass, his lawn was trimmed weekly. Another for excessive noise, he worked nights and wasn't home. And the last for unapproved fence color, he hadn't changed it in years. Karen was targeting people. This wasn't about community aesthetics. This was a power play. Nathan leaned back, exhaling sharply. All right, Karen. You want to fight? You just got one. The next morning, Nathan made sure he was outside when Karen did her usual inspection rounds. As she strolled past, he called out, "Hey, Karen. Just a heads up. I'll be filing a dispute over that fine." Karen paused, narrowing her eyes. "A dispute?" Nathan nodded. "Yep. Since your own bylaws don't say anything about door colors, I figure the HOA must have made a mistake. Thought I'd give you a chance to fix it before I take it to the county housing board." Karen's smile froze in place. "That won't be necessary." "Great," Nathan said, taking another sip of coffee. "So I can expect the fine to be revoked?" Karen hesitated. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and walked away. Nathan watched her retreating figure. Oh yeah, she was rattled. But rattled didn't mean defeated. If anything, it meant she was about to double down. And sure enough, she did. 2 hours later, a city inspector pulled up in front of Nathan's house. As the official climbed out of his vehicle, clipboard in hand, Nathan sighed. Here we go. The HOA escalates the conflict. Nathan Carter stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching as a city inspector stepped out of his vehicle. "Morning," Nathan greeted, forcing a polite tone. The man, tall, mid-40s, with the weariness of someone who had dealt with too many petty complaints, sighed as he approached. "Mr. Carter?" "That's me," Nathan confirmed. The inspector glanced at his clipboard. "We received a complaint about unauthorized exterior modifications to your home. Says here you made unapproved structural changes." Nathan blinked. "Structural changes?" The inspector shrugged. "That's what the report says." Nathan exhaled slowly. "Karen, listen," Nathan said. "The only thing I changed is my front door. And according to the HOA's own bylaws, that's not a violation." The inspector sighed, rubbing his temple. "Look, between you and me, I deal with these HOA complaints all the time. Most of them are nonsense. But I still have to do my job. Mind if I take a quick look?" Nathan stepped aside. "Be my guest." The inspector did a slow walk around the front of the house, scribbling notes on his clipboard. When he returned, he gave Nathan a tired nod. "No violations here," he confirmed. "Didn't think so," Nathan said, smirking. "Who exactly filed this complaint?" The inspector hesitated, but Nathan already knew. "Let me guess," he said. "Karen Thompson." The inspector sighed. "Can't officially say. But off the record." He gave Nathan a knowing look. Nathan chuckled. "Figured." As the inspector walked back to his vehicle, Nathan watched him go, shaking his head. Karen was getting desperate. By the following week, the HOA's harassment escalated. Nathan started receiving back-to-back notices. First, a $250 fine for overgrown weeds, on a lawn he had just mowed. Then, another $500 fine for improper trash bin placement, despite the fact that he had followed the pickup schedule to the letter. And then, because Karen wasn't done yet, a final notice arrived, claiming his motorcycle was an unauthorized vehicle and needed to be removed from his driveway immediately. Nathan read the last letter twice, laughing dryly. An unauthorized vehicle? His Harley had been parked in the same spot since he moved in. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was making them up. Nathan decided it was time to dig deeper. That night, he sat in his home office, laptop open, researching the HOA board members. A pattern quickly emerged. Every homeowner who had pushed back against Karen in the past had been flooded with sudden violations. A man down the street, Greg Jensen, had received 10 fines in a month after questioning HOA dues. He eventually sold his house and moved. Another resident, Deborah Miles, had been fined repeatedly for unapproved holiday decorations. She later discovered that Karen had personally vetoed her color choices. And then there was Mike Reynolds, the guy who first spoke out about Karen's abuse of power. His property records showed he had sold at a loss just months after his battle with the HOA. Nathan scrolled through an old neighborhood forum, his eyes narrowing at one particular comment. "I'd warn anyone thinking of fighting Karen. She'll find a way to make your life miserable until you give in or leave." Nathan leaned back, rubbing his jaw. This wasn't incompetence. This was calculated. The next morning, Nathan decided to take a different approach. Instead of waiting for Karen to come to him, he went to the HOA meeting. The moment he stepped inside the clubhouse, Karen's face twisted in surprise. The rest of the board members, 5 in total, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Nathan," Karen said smoothly, "this is a closed meeting." "Yeah," Nathan said, dropping into a chair. "Funny. The HOA's bylaws say members are allowed to attend. Unless, of course, you're breaking your own rules." Karen's lips thinned. "What do you want?" Nathan tossed his latest 3 violation notices onto the table. "Just came to get some clarification. You see, my lawn is mowed, my trash bins were placed exactly where they should be, and my motorcycle is perfectly legal. So I'm curious, how exactly am I in violation?" One of the board members, an older man with salt and pepper hair, shifted uneasily. Karen, maybe we should." Karen shot him a sharp look. "The violations were issued properly." Nathan smirked. "Really? Because I went ahead and checked city ordinances. And funny enough, not a single one of these supposed violations holds up. It's almost like," he tilted his head, "someone's making things up." Karen's nostrils flared. "Are you accusing me of misconduct?" Nathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I don't know. Am I?" Silence stretched across the room. Then another board member, a woman in her 40s, cleared her throat. "Maybe we should." "We're done here," Karen snapped, slamming a folder shut. "Meeting's over." Nathan grinned. "Gotcha." As he walked out, he caught the nervous glances between the other board members. Karen's grip was slipping. And he wasn't done yet. Because now, it was time to hit back. The HOA oversteps and the protagonist strikes back. Nathan Carter had dealt with bullies before. Some wore uniforms, others hid behind a desk, and a few, like Karen Thompson, wielded power through paperwork and intimidation. But bullies had one thing in common: they always went too far. And Karen was about to make that mistake. The final straw. It started with a tow truck. Nathan woke up one morning to the sound of a diesel engine idling outside his house. When he stepped onto his porch, his jaw tightened. A tow truck was backed into his driveway. 2 men stood beside it, one holding a clipboard, the other already attaching chains to his motorcycle. Nathan's motorcycle. Karen stood smugly on the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. Nathan took a slow breath before stepping forward. "You want to explain what's going on here?" The tow truck operator barely looked at him. "HOA violation. Unapproved vehicle." Nathan clenched his fists, but his voice remained calm. "That's my registered street-legal motorcycle. I have paperwork. You're not taking it." The operator hesitated. "Look, I'm just doing my job." Nathan turned to Karen. "You think this is a game?" Karen smirked. "The HOA has the authority to enforce regulations. If you refuse to comply, we take action." Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're making a mistake." Karen scoffed. "The only mistake here is you thinking you can defy the HOA." Nathan pulled out his phone and started recording. "Let me make this easy for you," he said, camera trained on Karen. "This is illegal. The HOA doesn't have the authority to tow vehicles from private driveways. Only the city can do that." The tow truck operator's face paled. "Wait, what?" Nathan nodded. "You touch my bike, that's theft. And I'll press charges." The operator turned to Karen. "Ma'am, is this legal?" Karen's smug expression faltered. "It's an HOA directive." The operator cursed under his breath. "I'm not losing my job over this." He unhooked the chains and got back in his truck. Nathan chuckled as Karen's face turned beet red. "You just got caught abusing your authority," he said, pocketing his phone. "And I have the video to prove it." Karen clenched her jaw. "You think you've won?" Nathan grinned. "Oh, I know I have." The counterattack begins. Nathan spent the next 3 hours making phone calls. First, to his lawyer friend Mia Reynolds, who confirmed that Karen had no legal grounds for the tow. Next, to the County Housing Board, filing a formal complaint against the HOA for harassment and unlawful enforcement. Finally, to a local investigative journalist. Because if Karen wanted a war, Nathan was more than happy to take it public. Karen's empire starts to crack. By the time the HOA board met that evening, word had already spread. Several homeowners showed up furious. "My son's car was almost towed last month," someone shouted. "She fined me for a non-regulation garden gnome," another neighbor added. Nathan sat near the front, arms crossed, watching as Karen struggled to regain control. "These are necessary enforcement measures," she insisted. "No, they're not," a man in the crowd shouted. "And if you weren't so busy harassing homeowners, maybe the HOA wouldn't be under investigation." Karen's face drained of color. Nathan leaned forward. "Oh yeah, forgot to mention, I filed a formal complaint. City's getting involved." Karen lost it. "You think you're above the rules?" she snapped. "You can't just ignore regulations." Nathan smirked. "Rules? Funny, because the county records show you've been issuing fines that aren't in the bylaws." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the board members, the same older man who had looked uneasy last time, cleared his throat. "Karen, is that true?" Karen's eyes darted around, looking for support. But no one backed her up. Nathan pulled out his phone. "I also have video proof of you illegally trying to tow my bike." He glanced at the board. "You really want to stand behind her on this?" Murmurs filled the room. One of the board members spoke up. I think we need to review these allegations." Karen slammed her hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. You people are turning against me." The board members exchanged nervous glances. Nathan smiled. Checkmate. Karen's panic move. But Karen wasn't done yet. That night, Nathan checked his security cameras. And what he saw made his blood boil. At 2 a.m., a figure crept onto his porch, Karen. She rummaged through his mailbox, then took photos of his home. Nathan's jaw tightened. She was trying to fabricate another violation. Bad move. The next morning, he sent the footage to the local news station. By noon, the headline was plastered everywhere. HOA president caught trespassing on homeowner's property. Scandal rocks local community. Within hours, Karen's entire world started to crumble. Neighbors turned against her. The board held a vote to suspend her. And Nathan? He just sat back, watching the chaos unfold, sipping his coffee. Karen's final, desperate move. Karen Thompson was cornered, and she knew it. The HOA board was losing faith in her, the community was turning against her, and thanks to Nathan Carter's relentless counterattack, the local news had exposed her abuse of power. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. And this time, she made the worst mistake yet. The illegal move. Nathan had just finished dinner when he got a call from his neighbor, Greg Jensen. "Dude," Greg said, voice tense. "Karen just called the police on you." Nathan's brows lifted. "For what?" "She told them you have an unregistered firearm in your house." Nathan went still. That was a serious accusation. He glanced at his security cameras. Sure enough, a police cruiser was pulling up to his house. Nathan exhaled, rolling his shoulders. All right then. The police encounter. 2 officers stepped out of the car as Nathan opened his front door. "Mr. Carter?" one of them asked. "That's me. We received a report that you're in possession of an illegal firearm." Nathan chuckled dryly. "Let me guess, Karen Thompson?" The officers exchanged glances. Nathan shook his head. "Listen, gentlemen, I'm a licensed gun owner. Every firearm I own is legally registered." One officer nodded. "Mind if we check?" Nathan stepped aside. "Be my guest." As they inspected his gun safe, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "This happen a lot?" he asked casually. One of the officers sighed. "Honestly? Yeah. HOA disputes get ugly, and we get dragged into it." A few minutes later, the officers confirmed that Nathan's guns were 100% legal. "No violations here," the lead officer confirmed. "Didn't think so," Nathan said, smirking. "So what happens now?" The officer pursed his lips. "Well, filing a false police report is a crime." Nathan's grin widened. "Perfect. Karen gets caught red-handed." Nathan wasted no time. The next morning, he drove straight to the police station and filed a formal complaint against Karen for making a false report. The officer on duty didn't even hesitate. "She's already on our radar," he admitted. "She's been reported for similar incidents before." That raised Nathan's eyebrows. Similar incidents? So Karen had done this before. Nathan leaned forward. And yet she's still pulling this crap? The officer sighed. Not for much longer. They filed charges against her that afternoon. The HOA meeting from hell. Karen, of course, had no idea what was coming. At the next HOA meeting, Nathan walked in with a stack of papers. Karen scowled. Mr. Carter, you're not. Nathan slapped the documents onto the table. Just thought I'd let everyone know, he said, voice casual. Karen here is now under criminal investigation for filing a false police report. Silence. Then a woman near the back gasped. Wait, what? Nathan smiled. Oh, and I also dug up some financial inconsistencies in the HOA budget. Seems like someone's been pocketing fines. Karen's face turned white. That's ridiculous, she spat. Nathan turned to the board. I already sent everything to the county. Shouldn't be long before an official audit gets underway. Murmurs erupted around the room. One of the board members, a man who had previously backed Karen, stood up abruptly. I move to remove Karen as HOA president. Another board member quickly seconded. Karen stood up, shaking. You can't do this. I built this HOA. Nathan smirked. Then it looks like you built yourself a one-way ticket out. The vote was unanimous. Karen was officially removed. And just like that, her power was gone. Karen's last stand. But Karen wasn't done humiliating herself. Instead of leaving quietly, she stormed up to Nathan, jabbing a finger at his chest. This is your fault, she screeched. You think you're a hero? You're just a thug. Nathan chuckled. Says the woman who tried to get me arrested over a fake report. Karen was fuming. But then the police arrived. Nathan had timed everything perfectly. The same officers who had visited his home walked into the meeting. Karen Thompson? One of them said. Karen froze. What? You're under investigation for filing a false police report. We need you to come with us. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen looked around, eyes wide, searching for help. But no one came to her defense. Wait, this is a mistake, she shrieked. Aye. Nathan gave her a lazy salute. Enjoy your retirement, Karen. The officers escorted her out. And with that, Karen Thompson's reign of terror was finally over. HOA crumbles and Karen's downfall. The moment Karen was escorted out of the HOA meeting by the police, the entire room sat in stunned silence. Then someone started clapping. Nathan glanced over to see Greg Jensen, his neighbor, rising to his feet with a slow, mocking applause. Guess that's what happens when you run an HOA like a dictatorship, Greg said with a smirk. A ripple of laughter and murmured agreement swept through the room. Karen's closest allies on the board looked visibly shaken, clearly realizing they had backed the wrong horse. Nathan took a step forward, addressing the board members. So, now that Queen Karen is out of the picture, what's the plan? The HOA vice president, a balding man named Alan Pierce, swallowed hard. Well, we'll need to reassess certain policies. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Oh, I think we're past reassessing. The whole community just watched your leader get arrested for abusing her power. This HOA is done. A murmur of agreement swept through the homeowners. One woman stood up. I say we vote to dissolve the HOA. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Another neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Linda Marsh, nodded. This HOA was supposed to help us, not harass us. We don't need it anymore. Alan hesitated. Dissolving the HOA would require a majority vote from homeowners. Nathan grinned. Then let's vote. It didn't even take 5 minutes. By an overwhelming majority, the neighborhood voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. The entire organization gone. And just like that, Karen's life's work had crumbled to nothing. The aftermath of Karen's fall. With the HOA disbanded, a new sense of freedom settled over the neighborhood. Fines? Gone. Petty restrictions? Gone. Karen's ridiculous power trip? Dead and buried. Nathan enjoyed every second of it. A week later, a city investigator visited the neighborhood to audit the HOA's finances. Turns out, Karen had been pocketing thousands of dollars in fraudulent fines. She had imposed bogus violations and funneled the money into a personal slush fund, all while pretending to enforce community standards. The result? A massive lawsuit against her and several of her former board members. And Nathan, he made sure every single homeowner knew about it. The news spread fast. One by one, Karen's old friends and allies distanced themselves from her. Her reputation? Shattered. Her house? Well, that was the best part. Karen loses everything. With her legal troubles mounting, Karen was forced to sell her home. The same house she had ruled over the neighborhood from was now up for sale. Nathan almost laughed out loud the day the for sale sign went up. But he wasn't done yet. He made sure to spread the word about her history to every potential buyer. When one couple stopped by for a tour, he casually mentioned, "Oh, you're looking at Karen's old place." Yeah, she got kicked out of the HOA she created after being caught stealing from her neighbors. Needless to say, the couple quickly changed their minds. Karen had to drop the price again, and again. By the time she finally sold it, she had lost a small fortune. And Nathan, he celebrated by sipping a cold beer on his perfectly legal, non-HOA restricted porch. Nathan's final victory. One evening, about a month after Karen had vanished from the neighborhood, Nathan got a knock at his door. He opened it to find Greg and Linda, standing there with grins on their faces. Linda held out an envelope. "We all chipped in." Nathan frowned. "Chipped in for what?" Greg chuckled. "You, man. You took Karen down. You saved this neighborhood. We figured you deserve a little something for your trouble." Nathan hesitated. "I don't need." "Just open it," Linda insisted. Nathan sighed and tore open the envelope. Inside was a prepaid vacation voucher. 2 weeks at a lakeside cabin, Greg explained. "We figured after all the crap you went through, you could use some peace and quiet." Nathan stared at them, then shook his head with a chuckle. "You guys didn't have to do this." Linda smiled. "No, but we wanted to." Nathan exhaled, looking down at the voucher. For the first time in months, he finally felt like he could relax. "Thanks," he said, a genuine smile on his face. Greg clapped him on the shoulder. "You earned it." As they walked away, Nathan leaned back in his chair, enjoying the freedom he had fought for. And for the first time in a long while, he had nothing to worry about. Because Karen was gone for good. The HOA faces full legal consequences. Nathan Carter had thought the HOA was finished the moment the community voted to dissolve it. But he underestimated just how deep the corruption ran. With Karen out of the picture and the HOA officially shut down, a full-scale city investigation was launched into the organization's financial practices. And what they found? It was worse than anyone imagined. The HOA's dirty secrets come to light. The city audit revealed that Karen and several other board members had been engaged in a long-running scheme to steal money from homeowners. Fake violations, illegal fines, unauthorized HOA fees. It all added up to tens of thousands of dollars stolen over the years. Some homeowners had been forced to sell their houses, unable to keep up with the fabricated fines. Others had been bullied into compliance, scared of legal threats that were never real to begin with. Now, with evidence in hand, the city moved forward with lawsuits. Multiple board members, including Karen's closest allies, were charged with fraud, extortion, and misappropriation of funds. And the best part? Nathan had helped expose it all. The HOA board faces justice. It didn't take long for the subpoenas to start rolling in. The former HOA treasurer, a man named David Holt, quickly flipped on Karen in exchange for a lighter sentence. In a sworn statement, he revealed that Karen had personally pressured board members to issue fines against homeowners she didn't like. Nathan read the testimony and smirked. So Karen had been running the HOA like her personal dictatorship? Well, dictators always fell in the end. And now? It was over. Karen's legal nightmare. While the city built its case, Karen was forced to lawyer up. Her legal fees skyrocketed, draining what little savings she had left after losing her home. The worst part? The lawsuits didn't stop at the city level. A group of homeowners, including Nathan, filed a class action lawsuit against Karen and the former HOA board for damages. Nathan didn't even care about the money. For him, it was about principle. Karen had ruined lives. She had made people's homes feel like prisons. Now, she would finally pay the price. The final nail in the coffin. Months later, Nathan received a letter in the mail. It was official. The city of Town Name V, Karen Thompson and former HOA board. Verdict: guilty. Fines imposed, $250,000 in restitution. Additional penalties. Lifetime ban from serving on any homeowners association. Nathan grinned as he read the last line. Karen Thompson would never be in charge of another HOA again. And with that, the battle was finally over. Karen's personal downfall. Karen Thompson had once ruled the neighborhood like a queen. Now, she was completely ruined. With the HOA dissolved, her criminal charges stacking up, and a $250,000 judgment hanging over her head, she was officially a pariah. And Nathan Carter? He made sure to enjoy every second of it. Karen's struggle begins. Without her power, home, or influence, Karen was forced to leave town. But before she did, Nathan spotted her one last time. She was sitting outside the county office, clutching a folder full of paperwork, her phone pressed to her ear. Nathan slowed his walk as he overheard snippets of her desperate conversation. "I can't afford another lawyer." "No, I don't have the money. I just need more time." Nathan smirked. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. She had spent years making other people miserable, abusing her position to control and punish anyone who didn't fit her perfect vision of the neighborhood. And now, she couldn't even afford to save herself. Nathan stepped closer. "Everything okay, Karen?" She stiffened, her fingers tightening around her phone. Then slowly she turned to face him. The arrogance was gone. The smugness? Completely erased. All that remained was a woman grasping at the last threads of her former life. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Need me to lend you a few bucks?" Karen's eyes burned with humiliation and hatred. "Go to hell, Carter," she spat. Nathan chuckled. "Oh, I'm already in paradise. No HOA, no fines, no you." Karen turned away, shaking. Nathan let out a satisfied sigh and walked off, leaving her to wallow in her misery. Poetic justice. But the best part of Karen's downfall? Nathan found out where she ended up. Greg came running over one afternoon, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "Nate, you are going to love this." Nathan took a sip of his beer. "Hit me." Greg held up his phone. "Karen got a new job." Nathan frowned. "Okay, and?" Greg's grin widened. "She's working at another HOA." Nathan nearly choked on his drink. "You're kidding." "Nope," Greg said, scrolling down. "It's a tiny HOA in some rundown neighborhood. Probably the only place that would hire her." Nathan burst out laughing. After all the chaos she caused, after losing everything, Karen had nowhere else to go. So she ended up right back where she started, under another HOA. Except this time, she wasn't in charge. She was just another employee. Nathan smirked. "Guess karma has a sense of humor." Greg chuckled. "Best part, that HOA is strictly regulated by the city. She can't pull any of her usual crap." Nathan shook his head, still grinning. Karen Thompson had gone from ruling an entire neighborhood to being a glorified office worker. And that was perfect justice. Epilogue and final mic drop. It had been 3 months since Karen Thompson had been run out of the neighborhood. And let Nathan Carter tell you, life had never been better. No more petty fines. No more power-tripping HOA board. No more Karen. Just peace and quiet, the way it was supposed to be. Nathan spent his mornings tinkering in his garage, his afternoons riding his motorcycle, and his evenings grilling steaks on his front porch. And the best part? He could do whatever the hell he wanted without some clipboard-wielding dictator breathing down his neck. A neighborhood reborn. The community had thrived since the HOA's collapse. People repainted their homes in whatever colors they wanted. Kids played outside without worrying about noise violations. Neighbors actually talked to each other instead of living in fear of fines. It felt like the neighborhood had been given a second chance. And Nathan, he had become a local legend. People thanked him at the grocery store. Greg started calling him the HOA Slayer. Even the new families moving in heard the story of how one man took on the HOA. And won. Nathan just shrugged it off. "I just wanted my damn front door," he'd say with a smirk. The perfect ending. One evening, as Nathan relaxed on his porch, Greg walked up the driveway holding a piece of paper. He handed it over with a grin. Nathan raised an eyebrow and unfolded it. It was a fake HOA violation notice. Notice of violation. Infraction. Excessive relaxation and enjoyment of home. Penalty. Unlimited cold beers provided by neighbors. Nathan burst out laughing. Greg smirked. "You fought the law and you won, my friend. Figured you deserved a little tribute." Nathan shook his head, still chuckling. He leaned back in his chair, beer in hand, and took in the sight of his home, his rules, his freedom. Life was good. And as far as he was concerned, Karen Thompson was nothing more than a bad memory. Fade to black. The end.